If you've seen my video on Inagaw Mo Ang Lahat Sa Akin, you'll know I have a soft spot for stories about siblings torn apart by jealousy, expectation, and unspoken pain. But if that film was an intimate tragedy about sisters, Cain at Abel is that story's masculine brutal counterpart, where resentment doesn't simmer quietly but erupts into violence. Directed by Lino Broca, Cain at Abel takes the biblical tale of brotherhood and betrayal and plants it in the dry, desperate soil of rural Philippines. It's about two brothers, Elis, the favorite son who left home for a better life, and Lorenzo, the one who stayed behind. Their story begins with their mother caught in the middle and ends exactly where the title promises. In between those points, Broca gives us one of the most searing portrayals of toxic masculinity, class resentment, and family dysfunction in Philippine cinema. In a time where war stories and personal wars are blurring together again in the news, Cain and Abel reminds us that some of the most violent battle starts at home. And today, we'll talk about it. This is Cain at Abel. Let me tell you the story. The film opens in the province with Lorenzo or Lawrence returning home from a drunken night out. He confronts his mother, Senora Pina, about buying tractors for the farm, hoping to modernize their agricultural operations. But she shuts him down cold. For Senora Pina, modernization would only make the workers lazy. And perhaps more importantly, she doesn't trust Lawrence with that kind of responsibility. The conversation quickly turns sour. Lawrence is bitter, aggressive, and wounded by his mother's lack of faith in him. The next day, Ellis, the younger, favored son, returns from studying in Manila, bringing along his classmates and girlfriend, Sita, to stay for the holidays. Unlike Lawrence, Ellis is polite, quiet, and appears more in line with his mother's expectations. It becomes obvious that Senora Pina sees him as the golden son, the heir worthy of the land, while Lawrence is dismissed as the family disappointment. Small moments begin to highlight the cracks. A casual dinner becomes tense when Ellis asks why his room has been taken over, prompting a defensive and dismissive response from Lawrence. A night out at the club shows Lawrence ranting about his brother's return, feeling pushed aside. There's a history here, and it's bitter. Back at home, Ellis tells his mother that he plans to drop out of college and marry Sita. Senora Pina surprisingly agrees, despite some backhanded comments about Sita's character. To her, Ellis can do no wrong, while Lawrence, no matter what he does, has already been written off. The tension simmers until it eventually boils over. As the story progresses, Lawrence's jealousy festers into something darker. The tension between Elise and Lawrence escalates, exposing old family wounds and toxic masculinity. Violence begins to shadow the brothers, and their relationship spirals from rivalry into something almost biblical, true to the title. Their mother, the manipulative matriarch, fuels the divide. She plays favorites, pits them against each other, and remains blind to the emotional damage she's caused. The film builds towards an inevitable confrontation. Two brothers raised in the same house, but shaped by very different versions of love, power, and pride. At its core, Cain at Abel is exactly what the title suggests. A story about brothers torn apart by love, envy, and family legacy. But what makes it so tragic isn't just the tension between Lawrence and Ellis. It's the fact that the war between them was never really theirs to begin with. It was inherited, or worse, engineered. Senora Pina doesn't just represent the controlling mother figure. She's the embodiment of generational expectations, of favoritism so deep it mutates love into rivalry. She feeds the fire between her sons, whether consciously or not. The land they're fighting over isn't just property, it's power, approval, identity. And in a family where love is conditional, it's survival of the most favored. You can feel the connection here to Inagaw Mong Lahat Sa Akin, which tells a similar story, but through sisters instead. If that film was about the silent violence of emotional neglect, Cain at Abel shows what happens when the violence is loud, physical, and aimed squarely between siblings raised to believe there's only room for one heir, one winner. Lawrence and Ellis aren't just characters. They're symbols of a deeper social wound. The way Filipino families can unknowingly pit children against each other by assigning roles. For example, the prodigal son, the responsible one, the disappointment, the pride. And once those roles harden, it becomes almost impossible to break free without hurting each other. This is what makes Cain at Abel one of the most devastating brother stories in Philippine cinema. Because even though there's love between them, that love is buried under too many years of resentment, unmet expectations, and a mother who couldn't love them equally. Let's talk about the people at the center of this family disaster for a moment. Ellis is the youngest son. He's what many would call the good boy. He studied in Manila, he speaks calmly, and he follows his mother's wishes, well, for the most part. And for a while, he avoids conflict. But underneath that soft exterior is someone who still wants control. He might not yell like Lawrence does, but he still wants to win. And the moment his mom approves of his marriage and gives him her full support, we start to see the power shift. He's not as innocent as he first appears. Lawrence, on the other hand, is a man who's already lost so much. He's rough, unpredictable, but not really evil. He just wants to be treated fairly, to be seen. And that's what makes him so tragic. Because no matter how hard he tries, his mother sees him as a failure. And with every rejection, his resentment builds. It's not just about land or legacy. It's about being loved equally, which in this house was never guaranteed. Sita is honestly the heart of the film for me. She could have just stayed quiet, been the sweet girlfriend visiting the province, but no, she chooses to speak up. She confronts Ellis when he starts acting entitled. She calls out Doña Pina for the way she raised her sons, and she tries to stop the cycle before it becomes deadly. Sita is the voice of reason, the one person who sees through the toxic dynamics and tries to fix them. She's a guest in this home, but she's braver than most of the family members. Becca, Lawrence's wife, is the opposite. She doesn't de-escalate, she pours gas on the fire. Her scenes with Lawrence are full of manipulation and bitterness. Instead of helping Lawrence see clearly, she feeds his paranoia. In a way, Becca mirrors Doña Pina, just as cold, just as calculating, just on the other side of the battlefield. And speaking of Doña Pina, there's Doña Pina, the matriarch, the center of gravity. Every character in this film spins around her, reacting to her love, her rejection, her control. She doesn't shout or throw punches, but her favoritism and emotional manipulation are the true weapons in this story. The tragedy of Cain at Abel is, in the end, rooted in the choices she made as a mother. How she raised two sons to believe that only one of them deserved to matter. Lino Broca doesn't waste a single frame in Cain at Abel. Every shot feels intentional, like he's quietly telling us, watch carefully. This is how a family falls apart. The cinematography by Conrado Baltazar plays a huge role in the tension. You'll notice how the camera lingers on faces, sometimes a little too long, making us sit in the discomfort. It creates this sense that something is always simmering under the surface. Whether it's a quiet dinner scene or a full-blown confrontation, the tension is visual. There's a weight in the framing, in the shadows that fall over Lawrence, in the stark light that always seemed to favor Ellis. It's subtle, but it's definitely powerful. Broca also uses space to communicate the emotional divide in the family. The house is big, almost cavernous, but no one feels at home in it. Characters talk across room, shout from hallways, and stand on opposite ends of staircases. It's like the architecture mirrors their emotional distance. They live under the same roof, but they're miles apart. One of the strongest decisions in Broca's direction is his refusal to make anyone a clear hero or villain. He doesn't tell us how to feel about Lawrence or Ellis. He just lets us watch them. That restraint makes the unraveling more tragic because we're left to fill in the blanks, to decide for ourselves who's right and who's just hurt. Also, the film isn't afraid to get ugly. When emotions explode, Broca doesn't hold back. He shoots violence in a way that feels almost too real, messy, chaotic, never stylized. And that realism hits harder than any choreographed fight scene ever could. If you've seen Broca's other works, you'll notice the same fingerprints here. The class commentary, the emotional rawness, the critique of family as both sanctuary and prison. But Cain at Abel feels especially intimate, like we've been invited to witness a family secret that no one was ever meant to see. Cain at Abel is not just a story about brothers at odds. It's about what happens when love is conditional, when favoritism festers into hate, and when a family treats pain like it's someone else's responsibility. Lino Broca strips the family unit down to its bare, brutal bones. What we're left with is something raw, something uncomfortable, but also something heartbreakingly honest. You see glimpses of love in this film, but they're drowned out by pride, jealousy, and years of unspoken hurt. And that's what makes it so tragic. What elevates Cain at Abel is how timeless it feels. Even decades after its release, the issues it tackles, family dysfunction, inequality, generational trauma, still hits hard. Because deep down, it's not just about Lawrence and Ellis. It's about all the families where silence screamed louder than love. It's about how parents can shape not just their children's future, but also their capacity for mercy or revenge. And maybe that's what hurts the most, seeing that no one here is evil, just wounded in different ways. So, if you've never seen Cain at Abel, or if you're looking for a Filipino film that doesn't flinch when showing the cracks beneath a family portrait, this is definitely it. Just be ready. It's not an easy watch, but it is an essential one.
Akala ko hindi ka na darating eh.